Welcome to DVC Alumni, where every story inspires the next. The official podcast of the Diablo Valley College Alumni Association. As we celebrate 75 years of DVC's impact on education, careers, and community, we're honored to share the incredible journeys of alumni who've transformed their time on our vibrant campus into meaningful careers, community contributions, and personal success. Each Tuesday, we spotlight DVC alumni, from first-generation graduates to entrepreneurs, educators, and leaders who share the triumphs, challenges, and pivotal moments that shaped their lives. And on Thursdays, it's Resource Thursday. We dive into the programs, departments, and services that make DVC the supportive, dynamic community it is, exploring how they serve students and how you can connect with them. Whether you're a current student, recent graduate, or longtime alum, join us as we honor DVC's legacy and discover how our past continues to inspire the future. Thank you for being part of this journey. Be sure to tune in, subscribe, and celebrate with us. DVC Alumni, where every story inspires the next. And now, join our host, Alumni Manager, Charlie Daly.
And we are live again with Estie Briggs, my friend Estie Briggs, and this is round 2 for her. So first, let's talk a little bit about what you do. So why don't you kind of explain what people do?
Sure. Well, I'm an emotional intelligence coach, and I do recently a lot of workshops helping people learn how to recognize when they're feeling strong emotions, how to regulate those and make the best choices in the situation. For example, I do a lot of workshops with construction industry professionals, and they, we all get triggered. Different things trigger us, but it's how you choose to react to it that can make or break your career and even your happiness in life in general. So I love that I get to do that. It's helped me because I'm raising a teenager. So we have a lot of emotions that need to be regulated on a very consistent basis.
Well, tell us how you got into that, just real briefly, the little 30-second sniglet on your expertise in it and stuff.
On EQ specifically, I went to school for organization development after leaving DVC. And one of the classes I took, we had to take this self-assessment and assess ourselves in these different areas of how well we use these different skills, emotional intelligence skills. And then we had to have some other people take the same assessment and basically assess us. And I didn't know it at the time, but that was an EQ assessment. And that was where I first learned about it. And I was just fascinated by the whole concept of it and learning these skills are something that we can build and that they're not fixed. So that's what got me really into it.
And maybe a 30-second, what's EQ?
Yeah. So EQ, or emotional intelligence, is basically a set of skills that inform how we operate in social situations and I like to say it's how we learn how to get along with other human beings.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so I want to do that just kind of because somebody won't watch the previous one or something. I don't know. But
yeah.
Let's catch them up to date. Yes. Yeah. So you mentioned briefly that you're doing a new workshop. So talk about that.
Yeah. So I was asked to run a workshop for a set of change management professionals, and it's specifically around overcoming imposter syndrome. And again, like some of the things I've done in the past, I found that it's everybody that needs these things, that needs these tools.
Anybody that has a pulse.
Pretty much, yeah. Although there are some people that don't have imposter syndrome that maybe shouldn't be doing what they're doing currently. But yeah, in general, I've found, and the research has shown that we all, like 70% of people experience some sort of imposter syndrome.
Right.
And so I'm having a lot of fun building that. I'm still building the workshop, but it launches next month.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that'll be pretty timely. So the reason I had asked you in here, and I told you this before we started, but for those at home watching on, is that I'm putting together, I'm going to be working on a series on, because one of the things is I know is like I've been out there hunting jobs. And for those of us that are a little more chronologically advanced than others, it can be discouraging. And so I'm looking to develop a toolkit of like things that people can take out of that. So, talk about some of the things like the imposter syndrome thing and how that can affect, like, for instance, when you're looking for work or all the other stuff. I mean, if you can take a moment and talk about that.
Yeah, I would love to. I think I've learned a lot from this workshop as well. And one of the first things that I learned is there's two causes of imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome, just in case those who haven't heard of it, is just this internal voice that comes up and tells you that either your accomplishments weren't really because you did a good job. They were, maybe you attribute your accomplishments to luck or timing. And it's also the voice that says you shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be doing this. You're a fraud. Everybody's going to find out that you're full of crap. And if I imagine, I looked for a job last year. I'm a solopreneur, but I did go through the job interview process, and it can be soul crushing because it's like for every one job you can see like, 100 other people applied for this. And so it's really probably very common for people to automatically think like, I shouldn't even bother, or I'm not going to get this. I don't deserve it. And so one of the techniques there's a lot of different strategies, but one of the techniques that I have people start with is to just do something that feels scary. And it could be something not like if you think about scary on a spectrum of mildly scary to like terrifying, if you're wanting to start building the muscles to override that imposter syndrome voice, you have to do that by doing something that's outside of your comfort zone. So that might be speaking up in a meeting at work. If you're currently employed, if you're not currently employed, if you're searching for a job, maybe call a friend and ask them to do a mock interview with you.
Well, I told you about, I'm going to be doing some networking workshops. And I think this is where, this is a good way to kind of work on your overcoming is good. I hate networking with a passion. I'm good at it. I just really hate it.
Right.
And it's just,
it doesn't
people
feel
icky.
Natural.
And
yeah.
so, but it's like, still, it's like, it is one of those things where it's a good thing. And so I've learned to kind of embrace that, God, I don't want to go. Nobody's going to want to talk to me. It's like, I'm not wearing the right shoes. Your tool for the first one is not jump out of an airplane without a parachute. It's find something mildly scarier than you would normally. Well, cool. So would you say that it's probably a good reach to especially to reach out to people to help you walk through stuff like that?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's one of the things too, is to have an accountability buddy. And it doesn't even have to be somebody that's going through the same thing that you're going through, but just somebody to tell them, I'm going to do this thing this week, and I just want you to circle back with me next week and ask me how it went. Because if you know that you're going to have that conversation in a week, that'll keep you accountable for doing the scary thing.
Yeah. Now, who do you use as an accountability buddy?
I have a really good friend who Joanne Cockininden. You remember Joanne?
Yes, I
Joanne
do.
Mendoza, yeah. So shout out to her if you need a good realtor. We actually have a standing Tuesday morning at 8:30. We check in with each other, and it's like, what are you working on?
How long have you been doing that?
We just started about a month ago.
Okay.
Yeah. I called her because I needed some advice about real estate related things, and we started. We were both working on a couple different things that we had been working towards, and it really helps. Oh,
cool. And what would you do, if you didn't have Joanne Cockininden? Shout out. So if you didn't have Joanne, how would you suggest somebody that maybe doesn't have a terrific network? What would you suggest as a way to go out and find that person?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it could be anybody. You don't want to just like walk up to somebody on the street. It could be as easy as like, if you're a parent, you could ask another parent that might be experiencing similar things. It could be if you're in a class, you could ask another classmate. And I find that people are willing to be accountability buddies. Like they like it, and they usually are like, oh, I need an accountability buddy too. So that might be the scary thing at first, is just asking somebody to, check in with you once a week and be your accountability buddy.
Yeah. I know that's one of the greatest ways to create a connection with somebody, is to sit there and go, hey, can you give me a hand? And, oh, yeah.
Yeah, people like to be helpful.
One of the things that we're going to be working on, and this will be a place where down the road people can look for accountability buddies, is we're creating a speakers bureau, which I'm almost ready to invite you to it. It's like it's not even a beta yet, so we'll get there. But again, it's going to be a great place to go find a mentor if you can't find one locally. So
yeah, and I'm happy to be somebody's accountability buddy.
Oh, there we go.
Reach out to me.
So what other tools do you think somebody could use if they're out there getting beat up in the job market? I should restate that. We can cut that part out. So what other tools do you think somebody could use as they're feeling frustrated by being out there in the job market, looking for work or looking for that first step into a career or a career change? Which are some of the things they can do to keep them kind of their, not just their
momentum of going.
Yeah. And keep their kind of spirits a little up. Because I know, like you said, it can be just soul crushing. I've been through that myself. So
yeah. One of the things that comes to mind is making a list of your past accomplishments. So it's easy to get discouraged when you're, you've applied and you know that they reviewed your application, but they're talking to 10 other applicants, and maybe you're not going to get this job. Maybe you are, but in the moment, it feels like your whole world depends on getting a yes. And sometimes it's helpful to step back and reassess, like, is it really everything? Sometimes the boat we miss wasn't the boat that we were supposed to get on. So a certain level of, confidence in the fact that the right thing will come along eventually, but also remembering things that you did do well that you're proud of. It's hard to keep those things front of mind when you're having, anxiety or thoughts of doubt. So I'll often work with my clients. I'll say, make a list of your past accomplishments and then keep it with you and look at it and read it before you walk into a scary situation, just to remind your brain that you can do hard things and you have done hard things. I mean, if you're all here and upright after COVID, like, write that down.
Yeah, I got a pulse.
Yeah.
Well, and it occurs to me as you're talking about that, is because I know I've been offered to leave from certain situations, we'll just say, and that could be very soul crushing, because it's like usually, or you getting out of a toxic a work environment or something like that. And it's like, oh my, where you came to believe that you sucked at everything. And that could be fairly therapeutic to kind of work yourself out of that. Are there any other tips that you would maybe help somebody along that you could offer?
One thing that comes to mind as you were just saying that is, I think it's important to keep in mind when you're applying for a job and you're hoping that they pick you and that you are the right candidate. It's also important to remember that they need to deserve you, and you're bringing a level of skill and experience to a company, and you want to make sure that it's going to be somewhere that you feel like you're going to fit in, and you don't feel like you're going to be constantly, because to go back to the imposter syndrome thing, there's two buckets that the causes fall into. And some of the causes are internal, but some of the causes are external. And it includes things like bad bosses and toxic work environments. And so I think it's okay to come at it a little less like, oh, I hope they pick me, and a little more like, I hope that they're the right company to get my skills and experience. And I know that's easy to say, because I'm self-employed, and it's like, but it's true. And I think like the one job that I didn't get, that I applied for, and I did all this work and didn't get it. And I look back and I'm like, I don't know if I would have been that happy there anyway. So at the time it was really disappointing, but
yeah, I know that we can attach a lot of ego to these things, and it's easy for us to like, oh, well, and convince ourselves that we're the best candidate, which may or may not be true. But then you're stuck in a situation where you have no control over the hiring process other than putting your best face forward and engaging in the best way you can. And I know during my last job search, I did get a job for about a minute, and it was kind of exciting. They loved me, and I interviewed all the way through except for the CEO. And then it said, oh, great, we have this great job for you. And then it said, yeah, well, we're going to have you in this other one. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a whirl. And within 3 days, I knew.
You're like, mm-mm.
No, I'm good. I'm out.
I think the more chronologically advanced we get, the easier it is for us to like recognize when something's not a good fit.
Yeah.
But I know like when I was in my early 20s,
I'll make it work.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I gotta prove myself.
Yeah. So think about for a moment, and I know I'm kind of catching you on the spot, but that's kind of what I like about this is we're getting some good stuff. So imagine for a moment that somebody is thinking about a career change, right? Which is, I've done several of them. I was thinking about that this morning. It's like I'm on my 4th or 5th career at this point, I think. And each one has got its own challenges. And I could go into that in length. But what would you talk about as far as tools to help somebody work through getting, because, it's if you're doing a career change, you're moving from one skill set to maybe something not related.
Sure.
So how would you suggest somebody approach that?
That's a great question. Well, I always would say start with asking yourself what's working. So if you're in a role, like for example, I was in the mortgage industry for many years. Which is where we met. And I wasn't so crazy about, I'm not going to say any disparaging things about the mortgage industry. There's a lot of good people that I met there. But there's aspects of it that didn't quite align with my values. And I just didn't feel like it was a good fit towards the end. But I loved training. I was really good at helping people, I was good at distilling information down and making it accessible for people, whether that was software or compliance rules, of which there were thousands. I felt like that was something that I was really good at. And so that's true. Like I've taken those same skills and used them in other industries. And so I would say start with what's working well and ask yourself, like, what am I good at in this job? And don't be too specific about the industry of the job, because chances are you do have skills that are transferable. Whether you're in construction now and you want to get into software or, it's helpful to distill down, like, what are the actual actions that you do that you enjoy. And then there's also there's a workshop that I've done in the past called job crafting. Oh. And there's a great article. I'm going to butcher her last name, but it's like Amy Wisniewski wrote this article, and she's a professor at Wharton, and they studied the things that make people happy with their jobs, and they narrowed it down to 3 things, and it's mastery. So being able to do something that requires a little bit of effort, but you can do it. Autonomy, which is, being able to make your own decisions about things, and purpose. And when those 3 things are all lit up for you, you're probably in a really good job. But then you could reverse engineer that and say, like, okay, well, what's lacking for me? If you're looking to pivot, why? Is it because the purpose isn't aligned? Is it because the mastery is no longer there? Maybe your job's been taken over with AI or something. Or maybe it's autonomy and you've got a boss that micromanages you. So I would say
none of us have ever had that.
Never. Yeah. Yeah. So I would say start with what's working, see where you can transfer those skills. And then something else came to mind, but now it's gone. But that's
well, and I was thinking about the example you gave of pivoting from construction to software. And while maybe you need to work on the specific software skills, if you've been in construction for a while, especially if you've been around for a while, you know how to project manage.
Yeah.
And being a project manager is one of those skill sets that moves everywhere.
Every industry. Yep.
Everybody wants one, especially people that can actually deal with all the craziness of managing a project. You got all these disparate people that all act like independent people. They don't do what you want them to do. And so you have to figure that out. So,
and construction's really high risk too. Like getting something wrong could cause injury. So it's not just, it's not just like, oh, we didn't meet our budget. Which is also high risk.
Yes.
But yeah, I think project management is a great example of a set of skills that can be applied in any industry.
Yeah, I know that here at DVC, they for a long time, they've had this program called Year Up where they learned software skills, but on top of the overarching one was project management. That was kind of like the overarching kind of thing that they learned. And because now you can funnel off into any direction and go teach that, or take care of that. So, so what other brilliance do you have? I mean, I'm like sitting there going, wow, this is great. I wished I'd talked to you 2 years ago when,
I wish I'd talked to me like 30 years ago.
Yeah, no kidding.
But I might have left the mortgage industry sooner.
Yeah.
No.
So we pivoted. We've learned how to kind of go out. Any kind of, I know this is kind of a short session, but it's like, I want to take these and I want to make them accessible to people. But what other kind of thoughts about kind of working through your career, like maybe deciding whether to change or not?
I think reflecting on a regular basis about what gives you energy is a really good indicator. So there was a book that I read a long time ago called Designing Your Life. And it had a workbook that went along with it. And I remember it asked you to just, so this is assuming that you're in a job currently. But it could also be something that a student could use. You could look at what you do during the day and, which classes light you up. But basically it asked, like, for every task that you do, how do you feel afterwards? Which ones leave you feeling energized and which ones leave you feeling depleted? And that's an indicator of things that you're, passionate about. So like, for example, if speaking in public, for some people, if they have to go give a public speech, they can do it, but it feels really stressful. And then for other people, they love it. So then getting to know yourself, I think just building self-awareness is the key. And the short answer to that is recognizing what brings you joy, what you're good at, what other people tell you you're good at. Oh, that's another thing you could try, which is actually really good for your self-esteem, is call 10 people, and it might feel weird, but ask them what they think you do well. Because often what we think we're good at is, we might be really good at things that we don't even give ourselves credit for, or that we don't even see. And, like my friend Kobe did that. So shout out to Kobe. Kobe called me one time and he was interviewing and he's like, what do you think I do well? And I'm like, you're an incredible listener. Like I'll say something to you. And then like 10 minutes later, I'll know that you heard me because you'll reference that thing that I said, and he's like, oh, thanks. So it just helps to get other people to tell you what you're good at.
Oh, good. That's actually a really good one.
And it's a nice little,
Well, and it's a great way to build a connection, too. It's
Yeah.
just like, hey, tell me what I'm good at. It's like, oh, I haven't heard from you in 3 years. Let me tell you what I think. And it could be good or bad. But
It depends on who you call.
Ooh, we won't call that person back. But, well, cool. Well, any other things you want to add on to that? I think this has been terrific. I'm like
Thanks.
I see
Yay.
a bunch of stuff coming out of this, but.
Yay. I think I have one other strategy that's coming to mind that I'm going to share for the overcoming the imposter syndrome. So, I'm not going to remember them all, but there's different types of, I call them imposter monsters. So like one of them is the perfectionist, and they all have each one has a different message that it sends us internally when we're experiencing it. And so like, for example, the perfectionist says, if you can't get this 100% right, don't do it because you're going to let people down or you're going to look bad. Like each of them has these different messages. Just practice writing down what your imposter monster tells you. Oh. You don't have to share it with anybody. I know. But you would be surprised at how mean these messages can be, and they're often not true. And that's the thing. It's all about unpacking these what are they called? Untrue beliefs or limited false beliefs. I butchered that. But write down the messages that come up for you so that you can, you're taking a little bit of power away from it. Because it's like, if you're writing it down, then you can analyze it and be like, well, that's BS, you know? Is it really the end of the world if I screw up? And the other one is have people do this in my class, but I'm going to ask them to draw their imposter monster. What does it look like?
Oh.
Because that also takes a little power away from it. So like when I picture mine, you know, well, I won't unpack all that yet, but those are some techniques you can use to kind of get under the hood there and see like what's going on, and what you actually have control over is more than you think sometimes.
Well, mine, it's like you're talking about, I'm like going, oh, there it is. Mine is and it took me a long time to first be able to listen to it and understand that, no, that's not the case, is the catastrophe. Oh. You know, the world is going to burn to the ground if I make this one small mistake.
Right.
And it's like, then you have to learn that, no, I'm not a heart surgeon. And I could tell myself that part.
Right.
But I didn't believe it. And now I've gotten to a point, but it took a long time, because it took me a long time to even realize it's like, you know, if I make this one mistake, everybody's going to hate me, because that's the first part. Mm-hmm. And then it's just like the world's going to burn to the ground. Mm-hmm. We're all going to go out of business. I'm going to be out of the street. Nobody's going to, you know.
Yeah, you can just cycle down.
There's a whole narrative that goes with it. It's ugly. So, yeah. So, well, that is terrific. I really appreciate that.
I'm glad we got to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we're going to be talking some more about it. So we're going to link to your website, which you'll be promoting your.
I'll share the website with you where you can see events that are coming up. And sign up for things.
We'll put that on a link for the podcast and then we're going to work on some other places to get the word out about stuff. So
awesome.
And with that, thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks, Charlie.
Yeah.
That was fun. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to DVC Alumni, where every story inspires the next. The official podcast of the Diablo Valley College Alumni Association, celebrating 75 years of DVC's incredible impact on education, careers, and community. We hope today's episode gave you valuable insights into the journeys of our alumni and the powerful resources available at DVC. Don't forget to join us every Tuesday for inspiring alumni stories, and on Resource Thursdays, where we spotlight DVC's departments and services, showing you how they're shaping student success. Until next time, keep pushing boundaries and exploring the connections that make DVC's legacy so special. And remember, DVC Alumni, where every story inspires the next.